Slay the Spire 2 is officially in early access, and so far, I've had a blast. But it can be a challenging game, especially if, like me, you were a little rusty and hadn't played a ton of Slay the Spire 1 recently. So, in this video, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to start with a beginner's guide, going through a run and explaining the basics. This is primarily aimed at someone who saw all the hype around Slay the Spire 2, picked the game up but has not played Slay the Spire 1, or, a really rusty veteran like myself who needs a refresher. Then, second of all, the other half of the video is going to be some more advanced tips and tricks that I picked up in the roughly 20 hours that I've spent playing the game so far. So, if you don't need a refresher on the basics, feel free to skip ahead, there's going to be timestamps below. But without further ado, let's get into things. Alright, so first up, choosing your character. On your first playthrough, you will get a run with the Ironclad, but after you complete that run or die in the process, you unlock the Silent, then the Regent, then the Necrobinder, and last but not least, the Defect. So, quickly going over, what do they do? The Ironclad is a warrior. You could probably tell that from his general aesthetic and vibe. He focuses on strength boosts, so dealing more damage with attacks. This is especially potent for multi-hit effects. In addition, he has lots of block synergies. You can make a Juggernaut build, and literally damage enemies by stacking block, or Body Slam to weaponize that block and deal even more damage. Also, he specializes in a type of attack called Strike. All decks start with Strikes and Defends, they're basic cards, but he has the Perfected Strike archetype and the Hellraiser card, which allows him to play strikes for free. Next up we have the Silent, who remains my favorite character archetype. The Silent is a rogue / assassin / hunter character, so think traps, also think poisons. One of my favorite builds recently has been Accelerant, which causes poison to trigger multiple times, ticking away at enemy health bars perfectly happily. There's also Shivs, and you can play a box that replays all your Shivs, because who doesn't want Shivs to go with their Shivs, while also shiving things? In addition, the Silent has the Sly keyword. So when a card is discarded, normally it just goes to your discard pile. With Sly, instead, it's played, so yes, you can discard your entire hand to play everything without having to spend any mana. This is especially nice because the Silent has a lot of cycle effects. Third up, there's the Regent, one of the new characters exclusive to Slay the Spire 2. His special ability is stars, these little blue things here. So, in addition to normal effects, his cards may have a star cost and may interact with stars. You can generate stars many times. Cards that have a star cost have a much lower mana cost, so think of this as a dual resource system that, if managed correctly, will allow you to play more things per turn. If mismanaged, maybe you'll end up playing less because you'll have no stars or no mana. Also, he has the Forged Blade, which hits very hard and can float around and follow you, which is awesome. Then there's the Necrobinder, who summons Asti, a hand. Now, Asti can take damage for the Necrobinder, meaning she can be deceptively tanky. In addition, she has the Doom keyword, which instantly kills enemies at the end of their turn when Doom exceeds their health bar. She's also got soul mechanics, so you can stack up a whole bunch of things, get a ton of draw, and deal damage based on the number of souls you've summoned. There's a lot of different playstyles here, and fun fact, Asti cards do not scale off of the Necrobinder stats, so if she has a bunch of debuffs, her strength is lowered, doesn't matter. If she has a bunch of buffs, that also doesn't transfer over, so, plan accordingly. Then last up, but certainly not least, we have the Defect, a robot character that focuses on orbs. So, at the start of your first turn, you will notice a floating little lightning symbol. That is a lightning orb. There are also darkness orbs, which deal damage when evoked. The evocation mechanic is unique to the Defect. Basically, orbs have a passive effect, but if your orb slots fill and the orb is bumped off, or if a card says evoke orbs, it will trigger a different active effect. Usually it's a passive, but better. So for lightning, it deals a small amount of damage at the end of every turn. Evoking it deals a significant amount of damage. Glass is like lightning, but AoE. Ice is defensive. Darkness, when it triggers, builds up damage. Evoking it unleashes all that damage. And Plasma gives you mana. In addition to this, the Defect has zero-cost card synergies, like Claw. How many claws do you need to make a claw deck? The answer is yes. More on that later, though. So that's a quick introduction to all the characters. Now, you might have noticed these little numbers. These are ascensions. So when you beat a run with a character the first time, as you can see, I've not done this with a Necrobinder. you unlock Ascension. This is increased difficulty, so more elites. More elites means more relics, but also more difficulty. Here, level 2, as you can see, Ancients only heal 80% of missing health, so health becomes an even scarcer resource. If you want to push difficulty, you can keep pushing Ascensions. If you don't, just play with no Ascension. And so for now, I'm going to pick the Silent, because she's my favorite. Let's do a run, and I'm going to explain some more of the game's core mechanics. So first up, you begin by speaking to one of the Ancients. You will speak to an Ancient at the start of every single run and every single act. The Ancient offers you a boon. So, in this case, Nutritious Oyster, plus max health, which will also raise current health. Lost Coffer, 1 card reward and 1 random potion. Think of this as a way to start picking a strategy and also a short-term gain. And then Cursed Pearl, which gives 333 gold. That's a lot. That's like easily a relic, but a Greed Curse, which is unplayable and eternal, so it's a dead card forever in your deck. How impactful Greed is depends on how many cards you have. So right now, it would be the 13th card. If my deck was 30 cards, Greed would have much less of an impact than if my deck was 5 cards. But I'm going to go with the Nutritious Oyster for some extra max health. Now, after selecting an Ancient, you get to traverse the map. And one thing that I want to advise here, don't just go based on this. Don't say, oh, well, the left path looks better, or the right path gives me more options, so I'm going to choose that. You can look at the entire thing, and you want to look and plan ahead. You can even use the draw tool. So let's say I wanted to plan my path, and I wanted to get as many rest sites as possible. So I start, I grab the draw tool. Oh, look, a rest site, that's 1. So if I go this way, 0. If I go this way, 1. Oh, look, 2 more rest sites right here. So I probably want to start by pathing this way, and then maybe branching to the right. But also, oh, there's a rest site here, and a rest site here. So there's actually 2 rest sites on this branch, but there's 3 on this branch. Something else that's nice, I get options for elites. Elites are dangerous fights that I might not be prepared for, so having the option to go into an elite fight, like from here, I can go here into the elite, or if I have gold, I can go here into the shop, where I can remove a card from my deck or buy a relic. This means I have choices. If I'm feeling strong, I go here. If I'm feeling weak, I go here. But I will then get either a rest point into an elite. If my health's lower, this is a good branch. Or if my health's higher, elite into rest point. In addition, you can upgrade cards at rest points, so even if you are full health, they are still valuable. Also, don't worry about treasure chests. There's always a band of treasure chests like this. Because there's a band, it doesn't matter what path you choose. So, for now, I'm going to clear the map because I drew all over it. And select my first enemy. Battle start. I have extra cards in my hand from the Silent's Ring of a Snake. Now, cards are broken up into attacks, skills, and powers. Powers, you play it, the effect persists for the rest of the battle. Attacks generally deal damage. Skills generally give you block. So, I'm going to start with Neutralize. This deals damage and inflicts weak. Because it was a 0-cost card, I still have 3 energy. Energy is used to play cards. You can see the little top left here. All of these cards cost 1 energy. The enemy intends to attack. It's going to deal 8 damage to me. Healing is very limited in Slay the Spire. So, I can play a defense card and gain block. Now I will lose the block before I take damage. Block is also cleared after the enemy's turn. So, it's not like I will have 5 block if this didn't attack at the start of my next turn and I have 0. Next up, I'm going to attack. I've dealt damage. The enemy now has 35 health. Last up, I have 2 options. I can either attack again, get in some damage, I will take 3 damage, or I can defend, and I will take 0 damage this turn. You might say, okay, but health is limited, you should always defend. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because some enemies aggressively ramp up over time or flood your deck with junk cards, in which case you would want to kill them as quickly as possible. But here, I am going to defend and take no damage. Now the enemy intends to attack again. and attack twice, so 2 times 4 for 8 total damage. Meaning I can play Survivor, and I gain enough block to prevent all of that damage, so I can use the rest of my energy to play 2 strikes. This time, the enemy is going to buff itself and add some block. I'll use 2 strikes. If I had a 3rd strike, I would use it here. I don't need to defend at all, but I don't, so I'm just going to end my turn. Okay, the enemy is going to do 12 damage. First up, neutralize. Now it's down to 9. I will block twice and play my last strike. Not a super effective turn, but not the worst either. I take no damage and I did lower the enemy's health. Now you'll notice it is doing 3 times 4 damage now. This is because it has 1 strength. So instead of 2 times 4, it's now doing 3 times 4 or 12. Strength scales multi-hit attacks far more effectively than single-hit attacks. And that mechanic is true for both you and the enemy. So I want to block, right? No. Why not? Because I can play strikes and simply kill the enemy. Always check your options and your lines of play, because you don't want to end up in a situation where, in an attempt to defend, you blocked instead of just killing the enemy. I get some gold, and now I can choose a new card. So I can gain Hat Trick, a skill that gives me 7 block when played, and add Sly, which means I could discard a card from my hand and it would be played. Noxious Fumes is a power. At the start of my turn, I apply 2 poison to all enemies. Think of this as ramping damage. Or Deadly Poison, which applies 5 poison to a creature. The alternative is I can hit Skip, in which case I would get none of these cards. If something doesn't synergize with your strategy, it is better to skip and not add it to your deck than take something that will bloat your deck and slow you down. But I want to play with a poison archetype, so I'm going to take Noxious Fumes and then proceed. From here, I can either go into a combat encounter, which leads to a shop, or a random encounter that is an event. Right now, I don't have very much gold, so I'm not going to go for the shop. Going for an early shop can be pretty good. The thing is, up here there's another shop, and I want to save my money to buy something over there. So instead, I think I'm going to go here. And oh look, it's a shop. This is the downside of random events. Sometimes you get something you don't particularly want, because there is not very much that I can buy here. I only have 118 gold. I would love to get something like a Festive Popper or a Potion Belt, but I can't afford it. So instead, I'm going to use the card removal service and remove 1 strike from my deck to make it a little bit more lean, because if I'm playing a poison build, strikes probably aren't going to be that useful to me. Also, if I wanted to play a Shiv build, I could totally grab up my sleeve here. It is very good. In general, you don't want to mix 2 different strategies, though for the sake of demonstration, I think I'm going to grab it just so you can see what Shivs are. Here we go. On the second mystery encounter, I got a Brain Leech, where I can either add random cards to my deck, or rip it off to gain a colorless card reward at a cost of 5 health. Since it's early on, and I'm still trying to figure out what my strategy is going to be, I'm going to add cards. Specifically, I'm going to add a Bouncing Flask that applies poison to random enemies. Alright, so here's the next combat encounter. I've already played Noxious Fumes. Enemies are getting poisoned every turn. This enemy has a special ability. When any other enemy dies, it becomes stunned because it consumes the corpse and gains strength. This means there's some value in lowering both of them at once. But also, if I'm worried about my health, I could just kill one real quick. So I play up my sleeve, I get Shivs. These deal 4 damage, but they're single use. And I'm going to play exactly 2 plus the strike. So it has 2 health left, it's poisoned. At the start of its turn, it will die. And then the other Shiv here for a little extra damage. It dies, it eats it, it's now stunned. The stun ends, and so its turn begins. Because it has debuffed me with Frail, my block is ineffective. So my best play here is to just deal as much damage as possible and then play 1 block card. Next up, here we have a rest site. Either rest, heal for 24 health. You know what, I'm pretty healthy already. I'm going to smith instead. Smithing upgrades a card. So for Noxious Fume, poison goes to 2 to 3. For Bubble Bubble, if an enemy is poisoned, apply 12 poison. That's really OP. For Bouncing Flask, hit an additional time. Sometimes you can also reduce card costs, increase the damage strikes do, increase the amount of block from something like Survivor, basically make the card better. And if you want to view upgrades, just toggle View Upgrades. And then here we have the first elite enemy, the Terror Eel. This guy hits pretty hard, but becomes stunned when it reaches 70 or half health, and then massively debuffs you. So I'm going to try my best to stack up a bunch of poison while dealing just enough damage to maximize the effects there. I'm also going to pop the regen potion. So this way, it hits me for 12. I will lose 4 health, but I'll gain 5 back, which allows me to be a little bit greedier and stack up that poison, because poison ticks every turn. So this isn't 9 damage once. This is 9 damage, then 8 damage, then 7, then 6, then 5, plus the enemy's now poisoned. So I can take advantage of effects that trigger when the enemy is poisoned. Oh, look. There we go. Now the enemy takes 20 damage. And this time I will double block because I'm doing plenty of damage passively. That's the nice thing about a poison deck. You can be pretty conservative after the first or second application. I really shouldn't have taken this up my sleeve. It's so useless with the poison strat. It's going to attack and buff itself. But it has 80 health, it gets stunned at 70, and it has 20 poison on it. So actually, it's not going to attack on the next turn, meaning I can very safely stack even more poison, and even more poison, and my turn, oh look, it's stunned. And it is now poisoned for its entire health bar, so I just end the turn and watch it die. Unlike regular encounters, elites give you a relic. A lot of these are very powerful and can absolutely be build-defining. So after you make your way through the stage, you fight the boss, which in this case is the Lavagulin Matriarch, who starts asleep for 3 turns, giving you plenty of time to set things up, but gets very angry and very dangerous when woken up. So, do that with caution. Like right now, I can just end my turn. Nothing happens. She's fast asleep. She will wake up soon, though, so I should probably do something, like play some Noxious Fumes, stack up some poisons, as you do, and then end my turn. And when she wakes up, she starts to get very angry. So, I could play Bouncing Flask, get even more damage on her, or I could defend and get some block. But even if I play all 3 of these, I will only have 15 block. So I'm going to use the Fish Oil Potion, which increases my strength and my dexterity. Strength scales damage, dexterity scales block. So now I get 18, which isn't quite enough, but it's a lot closer, and I'll even discard my hand to do some damage with a couple of extra shivs. Alright, and for now, I'm just going to play out the rest of the boss fight. So, after defeating the Act 1 boss, you enter Act 2. This means you meet with another Ancient, and you have another path to plan. All of this repeats until at the end of Act 3, you confront the Lord of the Spire himself. But that about wraps it up for the basics, so let's head into the tips and tricks. Alright, so first up, before choosing a path every time you enter a new act, look at the entire map. Keep an eye out for points of interest like rest sites, elites, and shops. Your goal is always to find that balance. More elites, more relics, and usually an easier time in later acts, but a much harder time now. I found, especially in Act 2, where my deck isn't quite strong enough to crush the elites, but also, the elites are pretty darn scary. I also find it's better to aim for branching paths. If I can turn left and fight an elite, or turn right and enter a rest site, well, then I have options when I get there. If the previous fights have been particularly challenging, I can take a rest. Or if I have a really good card that I need to upgrade, I can do that. On the other hand, if I want a relic, time to fight that elite after all. And if you want a way to easily remember what path you might want to take, or just highlight things like elites or rest points, anything that's of interest, just draw on the map. This is a really cool new feature that was added with Slay the Spire 2, specifically for the multiplayer, but it's enabled in single player, and you should absolutely take advantage of it. Leave a note, just don't write your password on the map. That's not a good idea, especially because you might want to share that map with a friend. Tip number 2 is about deck building. Specifically that you should look for synergies early and then lean into it hard. Basically do the opposite of what I did when I was demonstrating in the beginner's guide, and I took poison stuff and also shiv stuff. Don't get me wrong, both archetypes are great, But if you get really strong poison cards like Accelerant early on, look for more poison cards, don't pick up Shiv cards. Also, if you get a Hellraiser, maybe you start stacking Perfected Strikes and draw effects. In most cases, if you try to go for two different strategies, they will end up working against each other, leaving you weak as a result. This doesn't mean you can take absolutely no cards of a different type. Obviously, if there's something that's really strong that just gives you a bunch of block, even if it's technically a Shiv card, that is fine. If there's a strike card that deals a whole bunch of damage, even if you're not technically a strike deck, that is also fine. But don't take things that are exclusive to that strategy, such as a Shiv power on a deck with no Shivs. Also, speaking of choosing paths, picking decks, making strategies, all that, if you want to see some of the strategies that I've found success with, the things that I've been winning with, then get subscribed, as I'm going to be covering some of those in a future video. Oh, and if you found this helpful so far, don't forget to leave a like, because that really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. And for tip number 3, smaller is usually better. That's right, you want to look for opportunities to remove cards, either at shops or through events. Smaller decks let you quickly cycle through your strongest cards. A couple more ways to keep your deck lean: pass on card rewards. If it's not going to add to your deck, don't use it. Also, exhaust cards and powers. Technically, exhaust cards do make your deck bigger, but you only play them once. Same with powers. Or cards that exhaust other cards can help shrink your deck within each combat. Now, to be clear, there are some strategies that work with big decks. There are times where you do want to fill your deck with a kitchen sink and everything, but most of the time, smaller is better. Tip number 4, read and learn enemy actions. Because a good rule of thumb is to identify immediate threats, i.e. an enemy that's using a big attack that might be low health. Short-term threats, an enemy that's buffing itself. It's not going to do any damage this turn, but next turn you might want to deal with it. And if it's low health, you might want to kill it now. And long-term threats. This could be something that floods your deck with statuses, or an enemy that gives itself the ritual buff so it gains strength over time. And then you have to deal with them using the tools you have available. If you have a bunch of block, maybe you just block that big attack. If you have the ability to kill an enemy before it buffs itself, that might be better than hitting an enemy that's just going to hit you and doing a little bit of damage. Also, if something has ritual, it can be better to target that over other foes. But sometimes this does get complicated. For example, here we have 2 cultists. The first one hits fairly hard, but does not get as much strength per turn from ritual. So, having a good amount of block mitigates it, and it will slowly ramp up over time. The other does not do very much damage, but gains 5 strength per turn. So, if left alone, it is going to be a major threat soon. If you have a lot of damage, kill the first one. The other one ramping up over time won't be a big deal because you'll kill it before it ramps. If you have good block, kill the second one. Eventually, it will ramp and outscale your block, but for now, it's not the most immediate threat. And as long as your block is sufficient to deal with the first one, it's not going to get that much scarier that fast. Now, carrying on from that, tip number 5 is learn enemy attack patterns. Let's use the Nibbler as an example. It always does the following: big attack, small attack with block, buff itself in block, repeat. Every time you fight the Nibbler, you can expect this exact pattern. And so, if you see it planning to buff itself in block, what's coming next? A big attack. Maybe you want to keep that block card with retain to deal with the attack next turn. Also, be aware of the fact that some enemies will counter your strategies. They might limit the number of cards you play, or they might limit the damage you deal / the damage you take. They can also inflict debuffs to weaken your block generation, or the damage you deal. So use potions to get yourself through the tougher fights. Also, be especially careful about attack patterns on elites. Most of them have some sort of escalating mechanic, meaning they get stronger over time, so the shorter you can make the fight, the better. Tip number 6, events can be awesome, but maybe don't go too crazy with them because you do actually need card options as well. These are the rooms with a question mark. They have a ton of different effects. They can give you gold, with or without a cost, that cost usually being your health. It could be a shop, including a special shop that's full of cheap relics. Also, keep an eye out for anything that lets you upgrade cards in your deck, generally making them stronger, or remove cards, because usually the strikes and defense are the weakest cards in your deck, so if you can get them out and exchange them for other things, such as through the transform effect, this is good. Transform's a little random though, so it might not always work out. In general, I would say the events are more positive than they are negative, but you can definitely encounter negative events, some of which might be detrimental to your deck, or could be a super challenging combat encounter that puts an end to your run if you get it at an inopportune time. Tip number 7, the powers and enchantments added in Slay the Spire 2 can really make cards shine. For example, one run on the defect, Pale offered me the Clone enchantment. This adds a new option at rest sites to double all of the clone cards, which of course all have clone. So I cloned Claw, the zero-cost defect card that gains damage whenever a copy is used. Because this is currently exponential, something that may get patched in the future as going 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 24, 16, 32, so on and so forth, maybe a little OP. Either way, I had over 100 by the end. Because I was constantly playing Claw, I did massive damage. Who needs block when you can just kill the enemy? Most enchantments are not as impactful as this, but they're still great and they add a new layer of depth to the game. Tip number 8, you don't have to do the entire run all in one go. Yes, I know this is less of a gameplay tip and more of a playing the game tip, but you can take a break. By choosing Give Up, you are abandoning your current run. If instead you choose Save and Quit, your progress is saved. Mostly. If you're in the middle of an encounter, you're going to be rolled back to the start of that. It doesn't save on a turn-by-turn basis, it saves on a room-by-room basis. So, as you complete a room, congratulations, you can go on. Fun fact, if you're thinking, wait, can I use this to save scum? Sort of, but since it keeps the same seed, most of your options will be identical after you reload the game, with your own choices really being the only thing you can influence. And last but not least, greed is good. Yes, health is a resource. Yes, losing too much health can be a problem, but health is a resource, you can also spend it. If it gets you something like a couple of extra relics in the early game, this can put you massively ahead. You will crush the Act 1 boss, and you'll be in a really good spot for both Act 2 and Act 3. Being greedy early is especially something that I noticed was holding me back as I started to push Ascension in Slay the Spire 1. Does it come back to bite me sometimes? Oh yes, absolutely. But much like with the prior tip, it's something that I learned as I kept playing the game. I realized, okay, I can be greedy here. I can go into this elite fight with 4 health because there's a good chance I won't take any damage. Also, there are times where I go, I have full health. I am terrified of that elite because my deck isn't in a great spot. Maybe I shouldn't be greedy this one time. So those are my tips and tricks for Slay the Spire 2 based on my experiences so far. I do have one little fun bonus for you though. Did you know you can unlock all 5 characters really quickly? At least for now. This is something that feels a little cheeky, so it might get hotfixed in the future. Start a run as the Ironclad. Then immediately abandon the run. Click on the Epoch, unlock the Silent. Then start a run on the Silent, and do the same thing. Rinse and repeat until you have everyone, and then play whoever you want. So those are my thoughts on the characters in Slay the Spire 2, at least for the early access launch, a quick introduction to the game and how it works, plus some tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way. Hopefully you found all this helpful, but now, if you're a veteran, I need your help. I want you to share some of your tips and tricks down in the comments below, because while I try my best to research for these videos and share my experiences, I'm not perfect, and also, the game has come out just a few days ago. I have not played it 24/7, so I'm sure I don't know everything. In fact, I'm pretty darn sure the community as a whole doesn't know everything. So let's all do our best to share some knowledge with everyone else. But that's about all I've got for today, and I would like to get back to playing Slay the Spire. So, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed. If you want to see more content from me, do remember to get subscribed. Also, if you want to see more of my thoughts on Slay the Spire specifically, you can check out my video on Slay the Spire 2, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where I go over my experiences starting from the early access launch. That'll be up in the card and down below. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.